I am currently a British national team battery coach, and last night I had the opportunity to speak on the battery, building the best battery, and also just building the best mentality and conquering those mountains that are in front of us. Some of the things I may pull from those two sessions I might put into today's session, but today I'm going to speak on catching and defending home plate. So a lot of times when you go to a catching clinic or you see a speaker talk on the subject, they're going to talk about receiving, they're going to talk about framing, they're going to talk about the footwork for throwing. I'm not going to do any of that unless there's a question and I can speak on it. Today I'm going to speak specifically on the catching position as a defensive player. And so we're going to talk on a couple different topics that are going to help your catcher be more than just a bump on a log behind the plate. Because you can take away a lot of second chances as a catcher with pop-ups and being able to throw people out on a pass ball, and you can be game changers, momentum changers, and turn ball games around if you have a good catcher who knows how to defend their position. It is a specialty position, so that means that you have to teach in detail. Just like a pitcher, you have to take the time to teach your catcher all the things that go into being a good catcher. And unfortunately, we don't do that enough. You've probably heard time and time again, the catcher is one of the most neglected positions out there. When it comes to practicing, yes, I believe so, because we do not incorporate a lot of our defensive skills for the catcher. They play catch up a lot, and they don't actually get to work on their defensive skills as much. So I'm hoping that today, what I speak on will help you develop some of the best catchers on the field come tomorrow. First thing first, we want to make sure when we start working with our catchers that they are equipped properly. I cannot tell you how many times I've got a new athlete to train with, or I've been with a team of catchers or a catching clinic, and I'll look around and the majority of them have gear that does not fit appropriately. And it's going to be hard to play a position that, number one, is not comfortable. It takes time to get used to being in a squatting position, and then you're in gear that doesn't fit you. And so some of the things that I commonly run into is they've got a mask and it's too loose. It wobbles around their head. So we want to make sure that first that the helmet is secure on their head, and that when they go to throw or they make any sudden movements, that it does not move and impact their vision. Okay? We don't want them looking like bobbleheads on the field. So we'll make sure that we secure that mask. And there are still some girls that do like to take the mask off. Even though they're supposed to be secure on their head, there are some. So make sure that it's one, if they are an athlete that does like to take the mask off, that it's adjusted appropriately, that it's not going to be on the face moving around. It's really going to depend on the mask and, I guess, the size watermelon that your catcher has on her shoulder. So, but make sure that works for them rather than against them. Second thing is going to be the chest protector. What I find a lot of times is the girls will have the shoulder pads, and they're in the way, right? Or they're going to have their chest protectors too loose, and so therefore their collarbones are exposed. Anybody ever break a collarbone? It's pretty painful, right? And you have to get in one of those harnesses. I've never broken a collarbone, but I have broken my brother's, and that was on Christmas Eve, and that didn't go over well. Anyways, we want to make sure that we protect those collarbones. So we want to make sure that the chest protector fits like a glove, that it wraps around. And in no way when they throw that ball is it going to, again, impede that throw or any movement. Sometimes also when it's too loose, I've even seen girls, it was so loose they go down and block the ball and that ball goes right in and gets stopped right there. I know it sounds silly, but it has happened. And if you're working with alternate means like tennis balls, wiffle balls, and all that, last thing you want to do is have to stop a drill just to retrieve a ball out from between the body and the chest protector. The other thing you want to look for is making sure that the chest protector is not too short. Okay, sometimes as your girls grow, you'll see they'll have it up around their belly button. And yes, when they squat, it might go down, but you want that chest protector to cover all the soft tissue of the lower abdomen. Okay. The way we're built as female athletes, we're built to birth babies, so they do not need a female cup. They do make them if you have athletes that want to use them, but you gotta just ask, that's gonna be a personal preference. Funny story, when I came to South Carolina, I was a freshman. It was the first time they came out with a female cup. Guess who got to try it out? It was not something I was proud of, but my seniors enjoyed tremendously making fun of me in that practice. and I got to write up exactly how the bullying went, and that's why it's probably not popular today. However, they do make them because there is absolutely a need. If you have a player that does sustain an injury, they do have them out there. Not always the best topic to talk on, but it is a reality. Okay? Shin guards, another thing that we run into. A lot of times they're too short. Okay? They don't cover the quadricep enough, and they're just too small. And they don't cover the feet well enough either. Okay? And it only takes one hit, okay, for an athlete to be injured. And if they don't have a good pain tolerance, then they're out because they got a bruise or a deep bruised muscle. And you don't want that. You want to make sure that if you can prevent any type of injury that's going to give them an excuse to sit on the bench, then you're just aiding in that. So you want to take away all those excuses. We want to keep our catchers healthy. The other thing that with the shin guards that we find is, you see in this picture here, and I talked to this girl, see the straps hanging down? We see this all the time. I think it's a sign of a messy catcher. She went home, she taped them up, she cut them where they needed to be cut, and she secured them. And she looked much more streamlined. I have actually seen catchers out there going after a bunt with the long strands, and they step on that and they end up tripping themselves. It has happened, okay? So we want to make sure we secure the gear as well, and that they are now ready to play. Then we look at the glove, okay? Too often, I see catchers that have pancake gloves. Their main goal is to manage the ball. And so when they put their glove down there on the ground, it just flattens because they do not take care of their gloves. This is so important. Okay? This glove is about 10 years old. Okay? And I've been traveling lately, so I haven't had 2 balls in it, but I usually keep 2 balls in it. And I'll have to admit that this is not a good sign. It did get packed away for a couple years, and so it did kind of bend, and it's not holding its shape there, so I probably need to get it restrung. Make sure that your catchers have 2 balls in their pockets. The other thing is that they're always going to have 2 balls ready to practice if they need to throw with the pitcher. Okay? So we always want to try to keep 2 balls in there. That way then they can secure it and build a really nice pocket in their glove. Okay? With the glove, another thing that you want your catchers to know, they need to know how to restring their glove. Okay? I think that's one thing that I see with a lot of girls. They go to dad, maybe your brother or someone else to restring their glove. Teach your girls how to at least tighten up the laces. They may not have to learn how to do the whole glove, but they do need to know how to do that. What I see often is that it gets really loose. One pitch, it breaks. If you're fortunate to have a catcher that has a backup glove, she can use it. But if not, then you're scrambling around trying to find a glove. And it could have been prevented if she would have known how to take care of her glove and understand how to tighten those strings up when she noticed that they were getting loose. Educate your catchers on those details. When you start to educate them about those things, they're going to start to care a little bit more, and they're going to start to understand that they've got knowledge. And when they're knowledgeable on the field, they're going to start to perform well. And it starts with understanding why they gear up and how they use their equipment. Okay? So, equipment, glove. I think I covered everything on that.
I have a question.
Yes.
That's a dual hinge. So single hinge or dual hinge?
Honestly, I think it's just a preference. This one I haven't used in the year. Some of the Nakonas were usually like a solid webbing here. That's what I used in college. I preferred that because it didn't seem to give as much and wear out as much. However, Nakonas were really soft, so that it was, because I played year round, you saw a lot more. The glove wore out a little more, but the pocket necessarily didn't. Just the entire glove was soft. I prefer that. And when you say hinge, you're talking about the straps. Oh, yes, right here. Yes, right here. I'm sorry. I personally like the dual. Okay? One of the things that I'm glad you mentioned that. So one of the things that we talk about was grip strength. Okay? And nobody likes to get hit in the thumb, get a jam thumb or their pointer finger smashed. To this day, if I get cold, these fingers here are all going to turn purple and blue, just from learning the hard way when I was younger. But I had a great catching coach when I was young. His name was Bernie. He was a little Japanese man. He honestly was my Mr. Miyagi, and he taught me a lot of different details about catching. And he actually had a glove that you could wear on both hands, so it was pretty cool. And he showed me that if I move my hand, my fingertips over, so I actually have 3. Now I have 2 here, I'm sorry, 3 here and 1 here. So I actually move all my fingers over, so I've got more of a puppet grip, and it's stronger to grip something like this than it is if your fingers are like that. So I move everything over, I have a better grip strength in that position, and guess what? It opens up over an inch of pocket, and I'm not getting pounded on that index finger. So that's something that I've learned. Every single one of my catchers, they've had issues, and I've transferred over to it, like it. It does take them about 15 days to get used to it, because they've already formed sometimes their mitt, so it takes them a little while to get all that reformed and get comfortable with it. But it is something, if you've got a pitcher that does like to throw inside low, or that does have that screwball, it does give them the ability to manage that inside pitch a lot better. And as far as that dual hinge right there, like I have little hands, I have little paws, okay? And so it's funny because when I go from baseball to the softball to the baseball, I cut the ball really bad. But right here, for me, and using my small hands, it's easier for me to manage both of those. Sometimes when you have that single hinge there, you get that. And I don't think that's the best pocket. And for a softball, maybe for a baseball it's a little bit better, but for this, I like the double one. And I'll have to be honest with you, I'm not up to date on the newest catching gloves because I haven't needed one in 10 years. So, but again, it's going to be feel on their hand as well, but you just want it to get broken really well. The next thing I want to talk about is catcher shape. Okay, just like pitchers, you want your pitchers to either be sprinters or endurance runners, right? If they're going to be your starting pitchers that's going to go 5 to 7 innings, or possibly take you into the late innings, she's going to need to be able to have some endurance. And then you might have that sprinter pitcher where you're going to have to train her to go in for a couple innings and just close out things, get it done very quickly. As a catcher, we don't usually have the luxury of having 2 or 3 catchers. So you need to make sure that your catcher is in catcher shape. I cannot tell you how many girls come to me and they are not in catcher shape. And catcher shape simply means that they're going to be able to get in that squat, and they're going to be able to hold that position and not be hurt in the next day or for the next 3 days. And what I see is a lot of times girls are weak. They're weak on their lateral movements, and they're weak on their quadriceps and their hamstrings. And they struggle to do simple movements such as a lunge. So we want to make sure that we get our catchers in shape first. So everything that you do, I want you to make sure that you're incorporating drills that are going to help get them into shape. Wall sits are great. Walking lunges are great. The reason why I say walking lunges is because you can also work on running form at the same time, okay? And that's going to be another skill that you're using in the game, so why not use that as well? We want to make sure that that they're just not quad dominant and that they're building up those hamstrings and glutes as well. At the collegiate level, when I start my training programs, I had a lot of girls that were pulling quads, and it was all because they were quad dominant. You see their running form and everything, so making sure that we're getting a good balance in the lower body there. This leads me into hip mobility. So we do a squat progression, and then we also do hip mobility program where we get that pelvic girdle warmed up and ready, because we want mobility back there. We have athletes that are starting to get labrum tears in their hips as well because they get so tight. Think about this, what do our athletes do most of the day? They sit at a desk. They don't even do PE on average. I think 3 days is the max usually for younger athletes. Maybe 2 days worth of PE if they're really young. They're just not getting that conditioning while they're at school, so they're sitting in the desk. And what do they do after that? They sit in the car when they go to a softball tournament, right? Sometimes an hour or so drive, maybe 4 hours drive. Or they sit in the plane. Lots of sitting. So you're going to get that hamstring that's going to just get short, and then they get tight and they can't move, and that's when injury happens. So we put our athletes on a hip mobility program, and I can go into a little bit more depth with that at the end of the session and show you some of the things that we do, but we make sure that we get that whole pelvic girdle stretched out, and we make sure that they also get the hips moving, and we get the best range of motion as possible. We want full range of motion, especially in the catching position. And then we talk about the arm program. And I brought these here. These are a new fun thing that I've started to use for my catchers as well. And I also do the Jaeger program is one that we've used as well. These are called strips. And one of the guys, Jason Stanford he just got moved to the Braves. He's one of the pitching coaches there. And this is just a strip program. You guys familiar with the old towel drill? Where you snap that towel? Now, I'll have to be honest, I've been using these mostly with hitting. But we've incorporated it into the beginning stages of the throw-in program here. So you're going to take these strips here, and you're going to basically hit that through. I failed on that one. And they wrap up around your shoulder here, okay? So you reach back, get it through. Obviously, I'm out of practice. So get it here, start it through. There we go, okay? And it's going to help get that length you want on the arm, and then you're going to go through a progressive movement going into your long toss. With the throwing program, because catching is specialized, I like to use the 12-inch balls to start with, but then I also want to incorporate the 14-inch ball or a 16-inch ball. Are you familiar with those larger balls? And then if you can get them into the pool, as part of their throwing program, get them with a water polo ball. I know that might be foreign up here, but I grew up in California. Water polo was one of our varsity sports. It's a great lower body workout to do water polo. Get in there, do the treadmill or the egg beater as a tread. That's also part of getting into catching shape. But then being able to long toss with that water polo ball gets that hand behind the ball, also gets you to come over the top. And it really, really is good on the arm. Several years that I played in high school, it was the best throwing shape I had been in going into spring season. So the arm program is very important. Let's make sure that we invest in that. And again, it's not about throwing all out. It's about really strengthening through the band work and getting some stability in that arm and making sure that as you get that stability, you're learning how to get length on your throw. And then making sure that the catcher maintains herself. We want to make sure that we also prevent injury and that we also rehab the body. Each one of our players brings a roller. You guys are familiar with the rollers. We bring the rollers to catchers. They make the small ones. They can put it right in their bag. Have them roll out before the games. Have them roll out after the games. Right now, they've shown that massage right now is the #1 thing for recovery. Okay, and then I think it goes to acupuncture. We're very fortunate that when we travel on the road, all our coaches and our physios can do dry needling and acupuncture and really get the blood flow to the muscles. So you don't have to have an injury. We just want good blood flow to all those muscles that are being used so we can get the oxygen and all the nutrients and everything that's going to help recover that body. So massage right now is the #1 thing that they're using to help reinforce recovery and bring about recovery. The best way to measure recovery is through hormone. Go ahead.
Question on massage with all the different types out there. You know, there's the cupping, there's the scraping, there's just soft tissue, deep tissue. What do you guys tend to lean on?
So we've had a couple different physios. We have one for every team. On our 18 and under team, our physio actually was from Ireland. And she was trained in the scraping and regular massage, okay? So, and then our other physio was from Australia, and she was trained in the scraping. The one was trained in the scraping, and the other one was trained in cupping, and then we had a physio that was trained in the dry needles. And honestly, what we found is it's really kind of been an athlete preference, and also depending on where it might be. And so we leave that up to the physio and that athlete to decide what works the best for them. Right now, the cupping seems to be the craze here in the States. I've had both. I personally like the dry needling. I think that I get immediate results for that, but I also had like a tendonitis issue after throwing a lot of BB, and that worked immediately. However, our other pitchers, they really like regular massage, deep tissue massage, tension relief. We also take the different size balls, then they do the pressure points. They'll get on the floor, roll it out with a ball, or they have special things now that you can roll on your legs or just the regular rollers. So we have a variety of all those things. that our athletes utilize. But as far as measuring recovery, from what I have found from our physio, I work at a sports performance lab in South Carolina, and our biomechanist actually happens to be British as well, so we're trying to make this connection because it'd be pretty awesome. His name is Jay Patel. You might want to look him up. He's one of the professors at South Carolina, but he also was instrumental in bringing about the Auburn pitching lab. You see that stuff that they put on the internet, you see the videos of all the sports science that's going on that came out of, we're doing that in South Carolina now. We've got a whole lab that we're going to be working with that's under USC Sports Medicine, Palmetto Health, and then the Apex Sports Performance. So it's pretty awesome the direction that we're going in. And I'm a skill instructor. I just know who to send my athletes to get all this stuff, and I've just learned along the way. But Jay Patel would be, he's a great biomechanist, and he was telling me that with the recovery, not only are they using the massage, but in order to measure it, the best way to measure recovery, right now they're just basically going off like what an athlete kind of says. However, they can do a hormonal testing, and that's like the most exact science that's out there, but it takes too long and it's too expensive to get that stuff back. So eventually it'd be cool if they could just do a little thumb prick like they do for like a diabetic meter. And I think if we can get to that point, we could probably see some really awesome things when it comes to recovery with our athletes. And when we talk about catchers, we really want to make sure that they're recovered. I remember when I finished my senior year, we were at the 18 and under nationals, and we finished, I think, second. We played 12 games in 13 days, 12 games in 2.5 days. It was a lot of softball. And I caught every single one of those games because the secondary catcher that went in broke her thumb on the first pitch. So I had to catch all those games. I did not know who I was or where I was going by the end of that tournament. I remember I was in such a state, my legs were just shaking. And I had to hop on a plane and leave for college, like less than a week when I got home from nationals. And I remember arriving on campus and the girls were like, "Hey, you want to go throw a ball?" And I was like, "No, I don't." And I was bold enough and knew my body and what I needed to recover to be able to say no. It did put me a little step back when it came to establishing relationships, and if they thought I was serious enough or I was just some arrogant player from California. But I eventually did earn everybody's trust, and they knew I was serious. But that wasn't a fun thing to have to do the first week I was on campus. But rollers, massage, get on a roller program and a massage program, and then hydration. Whether it's cold or whether it's hot, your catchers need to be well hydrated. And I think you can base that off teach them how to do the urine test, and that's going to be something that's going to be beneficial to you. Because I've had way too many catchers come clinic time, and it doesn't matter whether it's indoors, whether it's outdoors, whether it's hot, whether it's cold. I've had way too many catchers. We get going and we get intense, and they fall out on me because they're not hydrated or they didn't eat. That's the other thing. And unfortunately, you see that sometimes with female athletes, they didn't eat breakfast. So let's make sure that you are checking those things with your catchers, because if you want them to perform to their best and you want the stuff that you're teaching them to stick, they've got to be in catcher shape. And that means that they have to pay attention to these things. All right, so we're ready to get down to some of the stuff that actually is kind of fun. With your catchers, just like you would your infielders and your outfielders, you want to have daily routines. You want to give them something that on a regular basis they are going to be doing. And this is PB&T, for their daily routine. Pass balls, pop-ups, and bunts, and tags, right? So I have a pass ball drill that I do with my girls, and it's all dry. Everything that I do is progressive, because I want to make sure that they can do this without a ball, that their body's doing the right things. And they don't like it at first because it's the grind of the game. But I truly believe if you're going to master something, you have to rep it out. And we're going to rep it out, and we're going to master it with the ball, and we're going to master it without a ball. So what we do, we start with pass balls. Pass balls. How many of you guys are seeing results with pass balls where you're getting the outs? Probably not, right? Because usually somebody freaks out. The pitcher freaks out and she doesn't get to the plate, or the catcher freaks out and makes a bad throw, or she just doesn't make the effort to get back. Usually your backstop at a minimum is going to be 25 feet, right? So you want to make sure you're somewhere where you're working with that 25 feet. And I just put the balls all out, put them all out, and I make sure they understand, no matter if it's the ball's over here at this side, or if it's over here at this side, that this is their territory to defend, everywhere. And their eyes get about this big because they think they have to adhere to the box, right? Oh, the box is my territory. And for some reason, they're safe there. So we put the balls everywhere. Because during this drill, we'll go through a whole bucket, maybe sometimes two. We put them out there dry. Because it doesn't matter where you're at, what pitcher's on the mound. Any pass ball is never going to unfold the same way twice, right? It's going to have a kick. You're going to have different backgrounds. You're going to have, sometimes you'll be fortunate to play on a field that has an apron, right? And that apron could be turf, it could be regular grass, or maybe it's just a regular dirt. Maybe it's got a little gravel. Maybe it's like sunken somewhere because it got washed from the rain. Maybe it's muddy. Maybe you got one of those fences that have pulled up like this because somebody took batting practice against it. So now it's kind of dangerous and it has those little spikes on the end of the fence. Have anybody play on those fields? Yeah, I played on quite a few of those, right? So it doesn't matter what conditions that you're playing under. Or when I first played at Florida, my senior year, Florida had a brick wall that came maybe mid-thigh. So when I got down on my knees here to go catch a ball, that thing came right into my rib cage. And that was back before they had mandated padding, right? But it doesn't matter what the circumstances are in the playing field. Your catchers have to understand they have to defend this. So you want to make sure they know what they're up against behind them, so they understand what approach you're going to take. So we do everything dry. The great thing about this drill too, it's so boring. That's the great thing. It's boring. So you get to teach your athletes how to be boring but still stay engaged. Okay? From this, they're going to learn how to slide into a ball and field a ball, but they're also going to learn their 3 different throws. Because the further you get away from home plate, the more demanding of a throw it's going to be, right? So they're going to have to come up on that knee. They've slid down there. They've posted into position, and now they've got to make a short throw under pressure. So they're going to have a little dart throw right here, and hopefully their pitcher's doing their job, right? So when we do this drill, we actually have the pitchers involved too because it's tandem, it's teamwork. So the pitchers do their PFPs with one another, the catchers are working, maybe they did their block drills first, they did the receiving drills first, and then they come together with the pitchers to do this. So that way, and your pitchers are also working on receiving the ball and making their tags as well. And we're not going to go over how they're supposed to receive the ball and how they tag. You guys can decide on your own how you want to do that, okay? But also your catchers, maybe it's a little shallow throw that just got away from her. So she comes out this way, now she's on a backhand. Notice I posted backwards. If I post like this and I'm trying to do a backhand, what am I going to do? I'm going to hit my knee. So I'm going to post on the back way, I slid, I got into position, and I'm going to do a backhand. The one thing I see a lot of times with catchers is they rush their throws. We don't want them to rush their throws. So we do it dry so they can get used to this and they can start to make accurate throws. There might be a time when they slide here and they get in this position here, and now they have to do the underhand throw too. Okay? So you're going to give them an idea of how to work their range, right? You're also going to see if they've got good range, and if they're having trouble getting out of the box and their range is bad, don't do more. Sit them down, put them through a stretching program, go back, revisit hip mobility. Because what I see too often, we see this with shortstops a lot too, we just hit them more balls, right? Try to get there. And in actuality, sometimes it has nothing to do with the range of just one more rep. It has everything to do with the fact that they're just not flexible enough. So revisit that before you just give them more reps. Tell them to get stretched out. Make sure they stretched in the first place because sometimes they're good about skipping that as well. So once we do this, then we add in the moving ball, right? So we'll stand in home plate, or you can have your pitcher do it. One throws, then they do all their throws. And when I say we rep it out, we're doing 24 at a time. Back to back to back to back. They're drop stepping to the right side, they're drop stepping to the left side, and they're getting serious work. And that's why it's important to be in catcher shape. Now it's going to depend on how your pitcher is too, how many pass the ball, how the level of your catcher, but if you want her to learn how to stop that ball, because she's going to get tired and run into the backstop, show her what it's like every time she has to run into the backstop the right way, okay? And you're also going to start to see them start to get these outs because they're working together and they're communicating, so you can get them to communicate with one another as well. Make sure that they understand that when they're doing a throw, whether it's, let me go back to this one. Let's say it's a backhand. On the backhand, one of the things that I see is they rush that throw. Going back to that, they rush the throw, so they're just quick, they pop up. One of the things I want them to do, regardless if it's an overhand throw or whether it's an underhand throw or backhand throw, we want to lean with that throw. Lean, get some momentum behind that ball by getting a little kind of sway or a lean. So even with this here, I have them extend their arm towards their target. So we don't have any bend, so we're not like this, and then it goes up over the pitcher's head. Ever see that? Awful, right? So on this again, we're extending the arm. The other thing is it allows for that pitcher to see that ball longer, and she's not going to be so flingy trying to receive something that's just off course or a little too fast. Same thing with the dart throws. When they tend to sometimes rear back with us, but with that we want a good arm extension through. All right, now pop-ups. So my first year back into collegiate coaching, my first ever coaching job was at Lemoyne College. I love this team. They're always going to be very special to me. We went to the World Series that year because we simply managed the pop-up. I had a drop ball pitcher and I had a rise ball pitcher. And anytime the rise ball pitcher was in, our game plan was get the batter to force it up, pop up, take away the foul ball, take away the second chance. That's how we got to the World Series. It was that simple of a game plan. And they bought into it. Because it was amazing how many times there'd be a pop-up and it'd just be off here to foul territory and third baseman didn't get there, first baseman didn't get there, or the catcher didn't get there. And it's so simple. You take away that, you catch that foul ball, right? And worst case scenario, you drop it and yeah, they get another pitch. But best case scenario, you get it, that's another out, that's one less pitch. Right? How many of you have ever gotten beat though on that one that didn't get caught? That next pitch, right? You teach your girls how to take away that next pitch, but you start with your catcher, because if you can teach your catcher how to take away those blue bunts, you're going to make sure that your first baseman and your third baseman, who are usually like bookends, they're going to start wanting to do it too. It starts to become contagious. So what we would do with our catchers, again, we would is let them know that they have a territory to defend. And again, I was supposed to be on the field out there, so I had it all planned out. I like to work in circles with my catchers, just like pitchers. They have a circle to work with. So we call them clock pops. What we start with is we start with one that's going to be 3 strides out on either side. So you just kind of, based on the athlete that you're working with, you do 3 strides, and you can put cones as markers if you would like. And we work around 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock. And we work with a coach, or you can have another catcher facilitate it. If you can get your players facilitating the drills, it gives you the ability to actually coach. You can step back and watch. Plus, then the person who's facilitating that drill is accountable to helping make her counterpart better. Okay, and you get to see healthy competition within your team. That's so important. We all have seen and witnessed unhealthy competition in our teams, correct? Jealousy, envy, bad sportsmanship because so-and-so gets to play. And they learn to kind of like enjoy seeing their teammates fail rather than succeed, because that means they might get in, they might get playing time, rather than actually getting in and working with someone and learning, oh, they might be better than me, or hey, if I want to work my way into the lineup, I got to beat her. So you start to facilitate good, healthy competition by having your own athletes within the same position facilitate. So we go around, we do all the pops, right? And from there, we want to make sure that they're staying low. They're getting good drive. They're working on their foot. They've worked on their footwork to, if they have to do a little drop step behind. And on this too, they're trying to stay on their feet on this. If they can get out 3 strides, staying on their feet. If your catcher is having a tough time getting to those pop-ups, again, address the mobility, but then address their stance. In recent years, I've seen a lot more catchers that are getting in a really deep squat. So they're here like this, and they get down really deep, and their hind end is on their heels. That's not a place that you're going to be to where you can defend. You can maybe receive a pitch there, okay? And it's even going to be, think about this. Your quadriceps, your hamstrings, and your glutes are going to be the largest and heaviest muscles on your body. And but they're also kind of your slowest moving, most powerful but slowest moving. If they are not in a position to react, then it's going to be very hard for your catchers to quickly defend their positions. So I usually have my catchers get in a position where they're actually up. So they're actually up, shoulders forward. From this position here, look, if I was a third baseman, I'm just a modified third baseman. That's all it is, modified third base. And if you can teach it, if you have a catcher and a third baseman, you can actually kind of swap them because it's very similar to the stance. Third base is usually a little bit lower in softball. If they're not, lower them down. Get their muscles engaged. So from there, we work on the 3 steps, then we expand out to 5 steps. Now on 5 steps, they may be able to stay on their feet, depending on their athleticism. And then we add more reps. So then we go 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock, all the way around. Okay, so we add that. If they can't stay on their feet, I want them on their knees. The one thing about being on their knees there, though, what you're going to see a lot of times, they'll get down there and then their butt hits. When they do that, though, they're going to compress those knees and you're going to have somebody get injured. So you want to make sure that they stay on the tops of their knees. When they slide, they stay on the tops of their knees and their feet are up. They're underneath them, but they're not sliding necessarily like this. They're sliding your feet are up. So they can either go forward for the ball or they can slide underneath that, okay? But the key is that they can get out of that position once they make the catch and be able to look for a secondary play. Too often they do a primary and they disengage. Oh, I got the out. Yay, everybody's clapping. And then the runner's tagging. Think about this. Remind your catchers this. If a pop-up takes them, let's say runner's on 1. If the pop-up takes them towards the play, let's say the pop-up's going to first base, okay, most likely the runner's not going to run unless they get completely discombobulated and their back is against the runner, okay? So many times the back gets turned, runners are going to possibly take off if they're knowledgeable base runners. If the pop-up takes them away from the play here, they're right-handed, runner's going to probably steal, the top base runners. And if your base runners are not stealing, coaches, you need to address that because that catcher then has to come into she has to replace her feet, come from her knee slide, replace her feet, and then take a longer throw to get her out at second base. So little things like that are some of the specialty things that you want to be teaching your catchers. After we do 3 to 5, or the 5 strides, we expand it further. We go about 7 strides, okay? I truly believe that you should be able to get to the dugout and get to the fence of the dugout. Because if your corners are playing back, because we're starting to see corners play back a little bit more, your catcher has to know how to get out there. And I know that, like baseball, we don't get those really high pops, but you need to get your catcher out there because they do happen on occasion, and the worst scenario is the catcher that just doesn't make the effort. What I learned from this drill, this range drill, and again, we add more reps to it, okay? And you can reverse that too and put more reps around the short and then go less out there. The reason why I do more reps on the out, on the longest distance, the 7 strides or more, is because I really want to teach my catchers that they can defend this area. Too often, again, they're confined to the box. When they can actually defend in a territory that's beyond what they have limited themselves with. So, and you can do blind pops on that too. You can stand behind them and pop them as well. Honestly, when we're working on this, the reactionary of something blind is really more an advanced step. I want them just really working on getting out of the box, and knowing that they can cover the distance that they can. So if you find that the girl's doing fine with that, then you can go to like blind catches. and kind of give her the element of surprise. Bunts. So just like the pass balls, we're going to duplicate this on the front side. Dump the bucket, spread them all out, and I try to get these balls. So if I got this, again, I want my catcher to know what her range is. And obviously when it comes game time, you're going to have the strategy of whether your third baseman is getting it, whether your pitcher is getting it or not, or your first baseman, however you want to work that. But we're specifically talking about right now, what is your catcher capable of doing, right? So these balls will actually, we're back here, so we go 1, 2, 3, we're going 5 strides out, okay? And I draw lines in the dirt so they have a visual, and I want them to understand that 5 strides out, they need to know how to cover that. Okay? Because if you get somebody that gets caught off guard, you want your catcher to be able to come up and be damage control. And usually your catcher has one of the better arms, right? Let's hope. We're not just trying. Let's hope that's the case, right? That she's accurate and she's strong. And that she can throw under pressure. But a lot of times what happens is the catchers think that this is just their territory. Get them out. Get them used to taking care of that. What you're going to see, and especially when you start adding some defense in here, is that there'll be a competition to get to the ball. And when you start to formulate that healthy competition again, that hey, if you're not going to get to it, it'll speed your third baseman up, right? When you have a catcher, then get out here and get the work done. But this is the thing that gets complicated. You have, again, pass balls unfold differently every time, so do bunts, right? And there are a lot of girls out there that really never master true bunting because they just make contact and put it down and they leave it up. They really don't master maneuvering that ball where they want it or even finessing the contact. So you see a lot of girls that it's just down, and a lot of times they're way too hard in the wrong situations and they're way too soft in the wrong situations. One of the reads that I take with when I give signs to my bunters is I say, look at the catcher. If she's in a deep, deep squat and she lacks mobility, we're going to dump it right in front of her and make her work. Because she's going to rely on her arm and she's probably going to rush her throw. And if she's lacking mobility, she's probably not going to get in position to get that throw off accurately anyways. So we really take advantage of the catcher quite a bit. Or we try to put it in no man's land to where we make all of them have to work for it. So that's on the offensive strategy side. But this is the thing. When we do this drill, I'll have, again, a whole bucket of balls out here. And they have to prance around these balls. They have to maneuver their footwork around the balls. Because you never know if a bat's going to get put out there. What's the rule on the bat and the ball? Contact with the ball. What's the rule on that? I know sometimes it changes league to league, but what is it? If the bat hits the ball, what? Dead ball, right? But if the ball hits the bat, live ball, right? So make sure that you also educate your catchers on that rule. Okay? Again, you're empowering them with knowledge so they don't see contact and then automatically stop the play. You want them to continue with that play. So here we go, we got all our balls out here. And again, I don't have the best visual out here, but just think there's like 24 balls out here. They're gonna have a system they're gonna work. They're gonna work left to right, shallow to deep. Okay? So that way then they are clearing a path for their feet to work. And so when they go out here to the left, they're picking up here, getting in position because it's going to be close. As they get away from them, you're going to get that replace the feet, get the spin, get them doing the spin throw by replacing that feet. That one there gets a little bit complicated. If you have a catcher that can't do that, just get her around the ball. It takes a little bit more of getting those hips around, but she can do it. It's really going to be based on your catcher and how advanced her skills are. But if you can get them turning on that, that's going to be pretty nice. Again, shallow to deep, shallow to deep, shallow to deep, shallow to deep. And you're going to work that left to right there, okay? And it's one catcher. You can do it as a group and go one right after the other, but and they just pick and do it. But what I have found is if I put it out there, it gives them a nice little cardio work. We're working on getting in shape, and we're working on making sure that they're staying aware and engaged, and they're participating in their actual conditioning in the catcher's position. So that is the bunt drill that I do. And honestly, I didn't have to do much more than that. Good, okay. All right, let's move on quick with tags. Again, it's a drill that you can do with the catchers and the pitchers. So I do this drill here. So the catchers go through their routine, and again, the pitchers could be doing something else. They could be facilitating something at that moment. They could actually be at first base. But then I turn it around. And have the pitchers do the same thing, and now it's the catcher's turn to tag. So there's a squeeze bind. We put the balls all out here. Again, give them a little bit of room so that way then they can make they're not around the plate with their tags. So this one might be a little bit close, but we're gonna put them all out there, and this is for the pitcher. Okay, this is just solely to the pitcher. If you want to incorporate your third baseman, you can. And the tag, I used to do a technique where I would actually stand on the front of the box, and I would stand up, and as the throw came in, I would then force a tag out the side, and I just had a nice little swipe. And it actually worked really well because a lot of girls, even if you give them the front side of the plate, they still run around you. And I did that at the highest of levels. However, with some of the new rules that are coming about, it can be seen as obstruction. And it is really kind of a technique for a more advanced catcher and one that can read a runner, because if the runner does stay inside, what you risk is letting the runner get between you and the ball. We don't want that, okay? However, so once that was my first attempt at tagging there. And then I've transitioned into more back behind the plate. So this front corner is going to kind of split the body. We're giving them this back corner, and we're kind of up here like this. We get up. Again, this is going to be bang bang play because it's a squeeze play. So pitchers coming in, and what we're doing as we get low. Make sure they get low. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen catchers up in their positions and they get demolished because they're not, or they can't hold on to the ball because they're not prepared for the impact. So right from here, we're gonna, as we receive this ball, we get nice and low, and we're gonna drop that knee down behind. So it's gonna be parallel with that backside. We're gonna do a swipe tag. Now you can push up. We have girls that will drop down this way. You're just risking, if they slide into you, you're just gonna topple over. You're not doing anything. And usually, if a girl topples over with the ball holding on to it, becomes then the issue. So we don't want that to happen. So right from this position, we're gonna be, you're lowered, and we're going to drop, step, and tag, and then come up again. You're taking away that back side of the plate. And if they come into you, you're also in a stable position, a nice strong position. You're posted, and you can handle that collision. That good on the tags there? Kind of simple. Again, you see how we progressed from the back of the backstop to the front of the plate, and we incorporated the pitchers in that. And again, the pitchers are the ones that can facilitate the pops as well, or the opposing catcher. Not opposing catchers, the secondary catchers. All right. So those are the everydays that we must do when it comes to defending the position. Don't neglect them. Give them the time to do it. The last thing that I had, I know we're, 5 minutes, are we 6? How many minutes do we have here? We got a few. The last thing I want you to do, because we're having a problem with this at the next levels, and it may actually be a coach's problem. It might be that we just want to control way too much of the game at the collegiate level or the national level. And I know you see it at the pro levels too, but in my meetings and my pre-interviews that I did at the major league level, they all wanted the catchers to know how to call a game. And I think that's a sign of a confident coach, and I think that you can build really confident players by teaching them how to read batters and call a game. So with the reading of the batters, simple things that you can do just to teach your players. 1, read the mannerisms of the batter. First, I don't care where they're standing in the plate. Teach them how to read that person. Do they look confident? Do they look strong? Do they look weak? Do they look uncertain? Do they look doubtful? Read the batter. Show them what they look like. And if you go on the internet or point it out in a game. She's not confident. She just struck out. You can get her. Those are things that if you teach them how to read just the body language of the batters first, and girls I think are fairly good at that, right? That we can read some body language. What's wrong? You know, teach them to find out what's wrong with the other batters, okay? Then you can start teaching them how to read a batter who is back in the box. Oh, that's the other thing. Please teach your players. I cannot say how many times I've said up in the box and they scoot in. How many times have you done that? Take the time. Up in the box, back in the box, away, in. I have repped that out with players at all ages. And some of it's just making sure that we are also communicating correctly. There's been times where I've made mistakes. I would say, do it with your right foot, and I meant correct foot. We were doing it with the right foot, but I just meant left foot because that was the correct foot. Anyways, so then you can teach them what it's like, where they're located in the box. Then you can teach them what to throw when a batter has her hands high or her hands low, or what it looks like when a batter's dragging her hands or pulling her head, or when a batter's off balance. Or when a batter's got a really nice swing, but you just have to use the element of surprise to fool her. How to face those confident batters, right? And that sometimes just because they got a hold of that pitch doesn't mean it wasn't the right call. That maybe we just needed to refine it a little bit more and bring it in a little bit tighter. Maybe just she got lucky. Point out those things. Yesterday I mentioned how the Japanese, when they were throwing against Italy, it was just out, 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 out. That's all they did. That was their game plan. It was pretty phenomenal to watch because most people would want to dance around the strike zone and just waste pitches. And they were very efficient. They went right after them, shut them down one by one. Okay? Teach your catchers to be efficient. Teach them how to attack a batter. And you do that by coaching on the go. And that means, or coaching in the moment. And that means that between innings, you're talking to your catcher about certain things. I came up with a scouting and a game calling plan with my British girls because most of them had never called their games. Their coaches had called, and these are from our game against Chinese Taipei. Like I said, we went like 15 innings or something like that. It was some crazy slugfest. And as you can see, we called it kryptonite. And you can see the green is us. The black is all our scouting reports of them against the other opponents. Okay? And what I did is I sat down before the game and I created a sequence for my catchers and my pitchers in green. So they could read it very quickly, and I had these available in the dugout as well. As you can see on this one, this is from the catcher's perspective. We basically had like a pie right there, okay? We had the angle we were working, and each little circle there means that you can work a ladder, inside, outside, or up. So they basically had 3 or 4 ways to call this hitter, but a strategy. And if I was in the dugout and they couldn't remember, I'd either go this or this, and they knew right away how to approach it. And at any moment within that at bat, if it looked like they could stay with that same pitch, but locate it a little bit out, a little bit more out, and work that ladder, they'd work that ladder. So I gave them the option, so it wasn't just they weren't locked in. Here's another one. It's a Z pattern. Okay? This particular hitter, we wanted to make sure that we hit all the corners with her, but we actually worked the diagonals, and that we changed elevations on her and made her really work. This one here, we had L's and backwards L's. And so it became really simple, just simple reminders that we could tell or sometimes we nicknamed them. We had one called Diamond. This was Arrow. And it just gave us the option that we may be able to add a diagonal on it. So we nicknamed each strategy so that way then our catchers could quickly adhere to something, or at least get the sequencing started and then work from there. And what I found is that they were really beautiful in their efforts. And this one here was a simple ladder. We just stayed inside on this. We were not going to change until she beat us. And it actually worked on this girl. We had her grounded out every time. And then this one here was diamonds. And this one got a little messy. I had to redo this. Like I said, these were live. Okay, where we just set diamonds and we set them on the outside extremes, the corners, where we didn't want to hit that plate at all. We wanted her to swing at everything. This is one of their best hitters, and she still beat us twice. But it had nothing to do with the strategy there. It was that we didn't execute the pitch well. But it empowered my catchers and it gave them the ability to do it. Too often when it comes to calling and scouting reports, we tell them all the strengths of the other team and we build them up as superheroes that have no faults. Find the kryptonite. Empower your catchers and your pitchers by showing them the weakness of the opposing team. Find their kryptonite. That's why I worked in green. It kind of brought everything together and they had success with it. Any questions? I'm done.